Welcome to Don't Retire, Graduate, the podcast that asks you what you want to be when you grow up so you can graduate into retirement with purpose and passion. I'm your host and valedictorian, Eric Brotman, and I have been looking forward to this show. I can't tell you how much fun this is going to be. Our guest today is Bobbi Rebell. Bobbi is a CFP, the founder of Financial Wellness Strategies, the author of Launching Financial Grownups, Live Your Richest Life by Helping Your Almost Adult Kids Become Everyday Money Smart. She's a financial wellness advocate, the host of Money Tips for Financial Grownups podcast, and the founder of GrownupGear.com. She's also an alum from University of Pennsylvania, my alma mater. When I was a freshman, she was a junior and wanted nothing to do with me. We've already decided that. She's a global business news anchor, personal finance columnist at Reuters, and she's held journalist positions all over the place, every news outlet possible, but she's not been on Don't Retire, Graduate yet, so this is a first. Bobbi, welcome to the show.
I am so happy to finally reach this milestone. You know, it's one of those, I know you're going to ask me what I want to be when I grow up, but one of the things is a guest on this podcast. How's that?
Well, and look, I know that this was a pinnacle of your career. I'm concerned that there may not be any more ups from here, so we'll have to find something to do together. But this is really going to be fun because I'm very excited to have a copy of your book with me. And it is written so much like Don't Retire, Graduate, and that it's got a sort of a scholastic theme. It's got the prereqs. It's got, in fact, mine was published first, so I'm quite certain that you may have not only plagiarized me, but it's possible that this is some weird fan thing that you have for me. But nonetheless, welcome. Please tell our audience about your background a little bit and how you got to be interested in financial grownups.
Well, thank you so much. And I should say an earlier highlight of my early adulthood was, of course, attending the same university as you and, being aware that you had arrived as a freshman and, all the different things that were going to happen in my life that would follow your successes. So I'm very happy to be in your shadow and following your path as you continue to flourish. So as your star rises, I'm so appreciative that you are carrying me along with you.
Wow.
What was the question, Eric? About
actually,
me.
no,
Okay.
I think we can wrap the show up right now. That's everything I wanted. That's the soundbite I needed. No, tell us a little bit about your background and your journey to not only becoming a CFP practitioner, but also writing about financial grownups and about financial wellness, because these are things that we share very much in common.
Yeah. So I actually, I grew up, I went to Penn, which is interesting. I had wanted originally to go to a school that focused on journalism that shall not be named. But my father, who was a Wall Street guy, encouraged me to go to Penn, where, of course, he had gone. And thus came my sort of convergence between journalism and my interest in, finance and Wall Street. They sort of came together. And while I was at Penn, I had an internship at CNN in business news. And I just got really interested in it. I was sort of a super nerd. I mean, I was the kid that then went and took classes on how the Fed worked for fun and technical
electives.
analysis
Those were
of
your
the stock
free
market
electives?
for fun. For
Okay.
fun. This is while I took economics at the Wharton School, consumer behavior, all of these things. I was always very interested in that, but I was really a journalist. You mentioned my previous jobs. I was at CNBC. It was my first journalism job out of college, and I moved on. I worked at CNN. I worked at PBS. I was an anchor and personal finance columnist at Reuters. So I had all these journalism jobs, but always related to money. And it got to a certain point, Eric, where I love talking about it, but very often you're just talking about it in very abstract terms. You're reporting what a company earned, but that doesn't necessarily matter to the average person. And I really wanted to make a move more into talking about money in a way that was going to actually help people on a more specific level, in a way that related to their own world. So even now, when I go on TV, I did a spot just the other day, and we were talking about how the debt crisis could potentially impact everyday people. How could the fact that the government is having this sort of mess, which we've been there before, but if it really gets to the sort of bleeding edge, well, this could actually affect how much you pay for your mortgage, because it affects how much everything costs in the United States. It can impact stocks, and it can really have this thing where we can't control necessarily in any short-term way what's going on in Washington, but it really has this follow-on effect. And I've always been interested in talking about how what we can control, what we can't control, but what we have to do to protect ourselves and create financial security for ourselves and for our families. So long story short, left journalism, official full-time journalism. I'm still a journalist. I did write my first book, How to Be a Financial Grown-Up. And when I did that, what was interesting, Eric, is when I started doing speaking engagements and talking to groups, they were asking me very specific questions about what they should do with their money. And I'm, quote, just a journalist. I had interviewed experts. And I decided, well, if I'm going to get out there and talk about money, and talking about money when you don't know what you're talking about, I love so many financial influences. Many are my financial influencers, I should say. Many are my dear friends. But money is dangerous. If you're talking about money to people and you don't know your stuff, it is so dangerous and can really ruin people if you give them incorrect information. And I've seen it with financial influencers that don't have credentials. So I decided if I'm going to be out there and I'm going to write more books and I'm going to do more speaking, and whether I like it or not, people are going to take what I say as advice, I better know my stuff. So I actually then became a certified financial planner only in 2017. So, and I remember you were asking me, and you keep up your credential. I'm like, yes. And I love doing continuing education because I'm a super nerd. So I love learning about the different products that are evolving, the way that the laws are changing, the way that it's always fascinating how different things that the government does is sort of secretly aimed at changing our behavior, right? Or adjusting, reacting to things that we're doing. Yeah. So I'm fascinated by it all.
Well, not even secretly, overtly.
Overtly.
All right. So you've thrown a lot out at me, and I want to sort of digest this in pieces because, first of all, I consider most financial media to be sort of financial porn. And watching some of those shows, and I'll pick on CNBC, but simply because watching that is so unhealthy for you, and most of it doesn't matter to you at all. And there's a great deal of difference between personal finance for Main Street and financial talking head wonks for Wall Street, and they are not the same. And arguably, we could argue that the game is rigged against the average individual, not to go conspiracy theory or anything, but we could do that. I love the fact that you've taken the approach that if I'm going to be an influencer, I'm going to know what I'm talking about. Because I happen to think that most of the biggest influencers in our space, I agree with you, most of them don't. They're very entertaining. They sell a lot of advertising. People want their t-shirt, but they're not necessarily dispensing anything other than entertainment. And when you start talking about personal finance, people assume it's going to be boring. I'm a fellow money nerd. I took business statistics at Wharton as an elective. And don't know why I put myself through that in retrospect, but at the time it seemed like a good idea. I love the way that money works, and I love to help people figure it out because it is nuanced and it is important. So let's talk a little bit about your book, and then I know you've started a brand new financial wellness organization, a company that is literally launching. It's not every day I get breaking news, but this feels like breaking news. So we're going to talk about that too. But first, the book, because it is set up in a way that is extremely accessible and absolutely, in my opinion, it's very authentic. It's an easy read. It is an informative read. There's nothing boring about it. You used a sense of humor and you quoted some folks, and I love the quote from our mutual acquaintance friend Jean Chatzky when she said something about her son said, you know what I love is making money, and what I don't love is paying taxes. And it's like, well, welcome to adulting. Just great stuff. So, but you have all kinds of popular references in here, references to well-known people, references to movies, references to life that makes this so accessible. How did you get the idea to structure the book this way? Because it does feel like a sort of mini curriculum, which is something that our audience is highly familiar with because it's the way that I try to communicate. How did you decide to do it that way?
So I have to give credit to my book agent. It originally was not scheduled. It wasn't that way. And that was actually her idea. Full disclosure. The concept for the book was actually, she had that idea. And then that's how we did it that way. And we had electives and I don't know that we did extra credit. I forget, but I don't think so. We definitely have electives and graduate studies. You do 4 years of college. We do admissions. You did 4 years
Yeah.
of college. Mine is prerequisite, then the
Yep.
core curriculum, extracurriculars, and then graduate, and then admission. So it's a little bit different. The book was actually inspired by, I have a blended family, and I have stepchildren that are now adults. At the time, they were almost adults when this was written, because we know that books have sort of a long cycle. They were good kids. They were earning money. They were showing up for all the things they're supposed to be doing. And yet, when I tried to talk to them specifically about the everyday money tasks that you have to do as adults, I was just kind of getting, yeah. I tried to get them to set up a Roth IRA. They always said yes. And then it just didn't happen. And I said, I can't be the only one having this problem. And I know more about money than most people. So if I'm having trouble, maybe other people are too. And that, in fact, was the case when I sort of, tried to sort of soft sell it to people and said, what do you think about this concept that we have sort of, done our young kids a disservice, our young adults a disservice, because we've moved from helicopter parents to concierge parents, where we're sort of there to, be available to solve their problems at all hours, often with money. And so they don't really feel this urgency to do the things that we were doing. I know you talk a lot about growing up as a Gen Xer and how we were sort of left on our own. But the good thing about that is we sort of decided to be self-sufficient. We figured things out. We made mistakes, but they got done. The fact is, we have gone the other direction, and we have really overly helped our young people to the point where they kind of know we're going to be there for them, and we are. So they're not necessarily doing the things they need to do. So it's really important to empower them, not just give them the information, but also let them know that they're competent. It took a lot to finally get the kids to do the Roth IRAs, and it's actually complicated. One did, one didn't, which is a kind of a tease to the book, is why one didn't. And she made the argument to me why she shouldn't, and why she did things differently. But it was interesting. And the book has a lot of parenting experts and financial therapists, in addition to money experts like Gene Chatsky that you mentioned. And David Bach wrote the foreword, which I'm so proud of. He's amazing. Anyone that hasn't read David Bach's books should absolutely do so.
There was a statistic in the book that said something like 79% of adults in this country are helping their adult or grown children financially in some way. 79%, which does mean we
28% would hit up their retirement accounts.
Oh man! I mean, we've seen lots of folks who spend so much money on their kids' education that they can't, in fact, retire with dignity themselves. And, you do we all want to put our kids first. And this is one of those areas where it's really a mistake in most circumstances. But the movie reference that I go to is Billy Madison, the Adam Sandler movie where he has so much money that he sits by the pool all day and does nothing. And of course, the movie's not for all ages, so don't go out and watch that with your kids. But nonetheless, it's you can ruin your kids with money, and doing the right legal and trust and estate planning, doing the right philanthropy, teaching your kids the value of money is so important, and it's so complicated, partly because most adults don't know it well enough to teach it, much less to even exhibit the behavior. Where does this begin? Because financial literacy education in schools really isn't happening, and where it is happening, it's sort of done halfway. It's not great. How do we teach people about something this complicated and this important?
Well, you point out all the most important things. And what's been interesting is after a book comes out, people come up to you and they start confessing to you and telling you things that they wouldn't tell anybody else. And so many parents have come up to me and said, but I don't know enough about money to teach my kids. And my answer is, you are the stakeholder. You got to get it together. Right? Because at the end of the day, even if the schools were doing a good job, which in most cases they are not, ultimately the schools, no matter how well-intentioned, are not stakeholders in your family's future. And the best gift you can give your kids is your own financial independence later in life. They can figure it out. They can get themselves out of debt. They can get loans. They'll get jobs. They'll earn more. They'll get it together. But if they have to support you, you're never going to get over that. So that's really the ultimate gift. And what I tell parents is that being the ultimate stakeholder, you need to step up, take responsibility, and guide your child through what they need to know to set them up. It's not just about competence, it's also confidence. Let them know that you believe in them. Be there if they come to you with a financial problem, don't say, here's the solution. Say, let's brainstorm. What kinds of things could you do to find a path forward?
Let's talk about student loans a little bit, because of all you talked about the government, it's certainly a hot button issue of are these going to be paid off for folks and so forth. But let's go back to the point where you have a 17, 18-year-old young person. I won't say kid, but I can't say adult either. So let's go with young person. And they're making huge financial decisions, often in a vacuum, without understanding the ramifications of those decisions, with almost no guidance. And they're being offered loans that 5 years later, a bank would laugh at them if they came for a loan to start a business. But if they want to go get a liberal arts degree, here, have all the money you want. It is a bizarre thing to me that continues. How do we fix student loans? And how do we get kids to think about what it means to be $100,000 or more in the hole when you start your financial journey? Because it's like building a skyscraper and starting with something subterranean.
Yeah, this is something that I think is really weighing on young people and really taking the focus away from what they should be focusing on, which is starting their lives with a clean slate. So I think it's important for parents to communicate to their children what they're taking on, maybe open the kimono a little and say, look, we are not going to be able, here's what we can do, here's what we cannot do, and let's make the smart choice. I also think it's important to, have some systemic changes in the way that we finance education. Many countries do it differently. So that is something. Another thing that's been happening, which I think is interesting, is corporate America. There's new legislation happening where we can allow kids that are paying off their student loans to also have their company match that in terms of retirement. So we don't have the situation as they move forward where they're so busy paying off this debt that they're also delaying saving for retirement. So that's actually a little bit of progress. It's going to be a couple of years, I think, before that kicks in. You probably know better than I do, but it's important to open their eyes, let them understand what's going on, let them understand that whether they feel like adults or not, this is a very grown-up decision, and to tread carefully and make the best choices. I mean, a lot of schools will give merit scholarships. There's one of the people in my book, I don't know if you've gotten to this point yet, is Ron Lieber, and he wrote a book called The Price You Pay for College. And I highly recommend it because what it does is it shows us that the price we pay for college is not only tied to need-based financial aid in terms of grants and loans, it's also tied to how much the school wants your kid. So this is a bit of a puzzle for many parents, but you can actually go to schools and say, well, my kid, we may not qualify for traditional student aid, but my kid would be a great asset to your school. He's got other choices. She's got other choices, whatever it may be. What can you do for us? Can you work with us? Because they call them merit scholarships, but the truth is, I think they're kind of like marketing budgets for these schools because they want the best and brightest kids to come to their schools. And so this is a tool that many schools are using to recruit and retain and get higher yield rates. I'm not sure I phrased that correctly. And that's something that parents should be very savvy about and really use to their benefit. Do you know much about that?
Parents have been shopping financial aid offers for a long time.
Right, but this is different. This is not financial aid. Yeah.
Correct. So on the financial aid side, it's, hey, school B offered us this and school A, we'd like to come here, but you need to match the offer. This is along the lines of saying, this is what we're willing to spend, and you're going to want this deal. It's almost putting the shoe on the other foot. And some schools have acceptance rates at 80 and 90%. I mean, at some point, is your building on fire? I hear sirens. Is your building? You're in New York City, aren't you?
I am in New York City. Yes, there are fire sirens
that's
outside.
Fine.
So we can cut that out, maybe. But
no,
welcome
I
to New York City.
That's the cacophony of
we can leave it in.
Of Manhattan. We can leave it right there. So, but you talk about how you can negotiate. And you can negotiate for education for your kids, particularly if they're strong students and if they've done some things. You know, when you and I were applying to schools, it was important to be involved in everything. It was about having diverse resumes. And so we'd be in 10 clubs or 10 hobbies. Today, it's about being really great and really uniquely awesome at one thing, which is a very different model now for kids. In fact, I was on a show recently about college savings and specifically how to get kids into schools. And the game has changed from when it was our turn. I don't want to say how long ago, but a long time ago. So there's that. You also mentioned the saving for retirement while paying student loans. Some companies have been offering that for a number of years. It's now going to be part under Secure Act 2.0. It's now going to be part of the deal across the board. But there have been employers who have been doing that for a number of years where they were allowed to essentially make the matching contribution to a 401k or a similar plan for an employee if that employee demonstrated that the amount they were paying in student loans was a large enough percentage of their gross income for the course of the year. So they had to demonstrate, number one, that was the payment requirement, and number two, that they made the payments, but then the match would happen. So at least they would still get something in their retirement plans. So let's shift gears. You have a brand new venture happening, and I know we have the first screenshot of the website. I don't know that anyone's seen this yet, or if they have, it's been your test group. So this is great. I love everything about this site. Makes me think financial therapy, and I don't know that so just it makes me feel comfortable. It makes me feel good, and then workplace financial wellness. And generational wealth retention are two things that we spend an enormous amount of time on here as a firm and in working with corporate clients and with their employees. So where did this business concept come from? And give us a sneak peek as to what's coming.
Yeah, so this came from the book being out there and talking to so many people about what is important to them and what's missing. Right? Because they feel lectured to very often, that they have this to-do list. It's very stressful. You have to do this, this, and this, and they don't know where things are. And, very well-intentioned people in human resources have automated many things, which is great, but they're just kind of sent a link and then they don't know what to do, when to do it. And most importantly, how to not just feel completely overwhelmed and then not do it. Add to that, people come up to me, they're so worried about all the layoffs happening. They're worried about, we just talked about Secure Act 2.0. What does that mean? I don't understand it. And they want a human to talk to. So it's set up to be a high touch experience where I go into companies and I talk and work with employees. This is the workplace wellness about how to manage their life, not just going through the checklist, but how to what are your coping skills while this is going on? Because you're showing we have in the screen recording, you're showing some statistics, but the majority of employees feel stressed about money at work. That's a PwC statistic. So how do you maintain productivity? Well, you've got to figure out if they're distracted, they're not productive. So we've got to figure out, they may have debt that's not going to be paid off for years. Let's say in the scenario we're talking about, they have student debt. They're stressed out. Okay, number one, we have to actually take action and teach them. Let's set up a payment program so you can see, yes, it's going to take you this amount of time to pay it, but it will be done. And all you have to do is nothing. Just keep the automation and it will be paid off, right? You feel better already. And then what are the coping skills that we can use so that you can sleep at night? Is it a meditation app? Is it just having more knowledge about interest rates and how things work? I mean, we've joked about being money nerds. I feel a lot of calm when I understand what's going on with my money, when I understand how different things work and why something is happening, right? So understanding the consequences and the benefits of the action that you're taking. And then the separate part, the generational wealth retention, that really came more directly from the book because people have come up to me and said, I'm interested, but my kids just aren't. How do I get them interested? And then the wealth advisors say, I've got these clients, they're great clients, but I can't seem to connect with the next generation. In many cases, it is true that sometimes the younger generation isn't interested, but I'll tell you what's coming out is the parents, they think they are inviting the kids along, but they're not. They're not really making the kids feel like this is your future. You may have to take care of me one day, by the way, including take care of my finances. You need to be proactively involved in understanding what's going on with money. Even if you are not the primary right now, I need you to come to the meetings. Let's say maybe you don't have to come to the monthly meetings, maybe come to the quarterly meetings. I want you to have the direct phone number to my financial advisors. I want you to get the statements too, so that you understand what is going on. And by the way, this is something that my own father did for his children. He said, this is where my resources are, and I need you to know the money managers. And you don't have to come every time, but you're going to come some of the time. And I'm going to discuss it with you, even though you may not, part of me goes, no. I don't want to hear anything about any future, that doesn't involve my entire family. I don't want to cry, but it's hard. It's really hard and it's emotional. And sometimes the wealth manager doesn't want to necessarily have these conversations or can't make headway with the older generation because they want control or they don't think the kids are ready. But the kids have to be ready to some extent, even if ready just means knowing who to call and knowing that something's there for them. And I think there's a huge role for financial advisors in this. I think this is the perfect area for a third party. One of the interesting statistics that people will find on my website, which is right now evolving still, but we've got the basics up there. So it's financialwellnessstrategies.com. You will see that 50% of the next generation is willing and open to working with their parents' financial advisors, but only 20% have ever met them. What a missed opportunity for both sides, right? We've got to get those meetings started. We've got to figure out why, in many cases, the parents are resisting and why the kids are not more motivated to understand the importance of just being in the loop and educating themselves. And that ultimately it's not optional. People think, oh, I'll just let them take care of it. You got to, at the very least, know what's going on. You don't have to get into the absolute granular everything. You've got competent third-party financial advisors that are going to do that, but you need to take the time and force yourself to be walked through the key elements and understand so that you're all on the same page.
So Bobbi, both of these areas are things that we share a passion for both of them. It's kind of a remarkable thing to have this sort of in my face because it's things that I've been preaching and talking about. So the corporate financial wellness, we have landing pages around that and specifically have done this for companies. And what we find is that companies don't want their employees distracted. They do want them to have some calmness. That you can't get it from HR. In fact, HR in a lot of cases, it's not legal for them to advise you on anything. All they can do is point you to the right link or the right resource, which is only so helpful to your point. I remember I got my first job out of Penn at Legg Mason and got handed the employee benefit book and immediately did what most young people do, put it off to the side and then said, oh, I got a deadline, and then talked to my father who gave me horrendous advice about what to choose because it would have been right for him, but not for me. And I don't blame him for that. He wasn't equipped for that discussion. So, but on this side, when we meet with employees, it's unbelievable how many don't understand, for example, the basics of an HSA or the basics of how a 401k or a Roth 401k can impact them, or they don't have beneficiaries named on anything, or don't have basic legal documents, or just are making decisions largely unarmed and in a vacuum. And so it's become very, very helpful to the employees, and the employers love it because it means that they're getting someone to advise them. So I love that you're making a push toward that. And then the other piece of that is the multi-generational. Firms like to say that they do multi-generational planning. One of the deliverables that we give every client is a family tree, and we have a legacy client program, and a lot of our clients actually pay initially to have their kids get financial plans, and they work with someone other than a senior principal, because I don't know about you, but I didn't want my parents' advisors, but I loved building a relationship with my own advisor at that same firm. Using the younger associate at the law firm or using the younger accountant at the accounting firm. We have millennial and Gen Z planners here who speak millennial and Gen Z. I'm the old guy. They don't want me. And by the way, I don't want my parents' doctor either. Like, you want somebody who's going to be around. A, you speak the same language. You've had some common experiences. And B, you want them to be around when you have to make some of the big decisions. And if your advisor's 30 years older than you, it's a problem. Because they're not going to be there. They'll either be retired or deceased. You're much better off working with a contemporary who can identify with you. So you're absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, your new venture is hitting all the right notes, both for the financial advisory community and for corporate America and employees. And I give you incredible kudos for tackling two really important subjects simultaneously, while still keeping your day job. And still doing all of the things that you're doing, because I had the privilege of being a guest on your show recently, and the things that you're doing just blow my mind. Like so I know it was a career goal to be on Don't Retire, Graduate. Well, I tell you, it's mutual. The respect is fully mutual, and so it was great to be on your show too. So I have to ask you now, because we're at that time, what you want to be when you grow up. And I can't wait to hear this. I'm going to just pass the popcorn. I'll be right here.
I think that I'm going to give you the sort of boring answer, but career-wise, I always wanted to be a storyteller, and I hope that I still am. I always wanted to be someone that was intellectually curious and was able to share my discoveries with the world. It was in the form of journalism earlier in my career, and now it's evolving with this new business, Financial Wellness Strategies, but always to make information accessible both for myself and for other people. And I know that's not probably the conventional answer that you get, but that's my best answer.
Every answer
and always evolving.
Different. Well,
Yeah.
and storytelling is important. I mean, think about how cultures have changed over the last centuries. It used to be that the senior most members of any community had the biggest tents. They were the ones revered. They got to make the biggest decisions. You went to your elders to get the right advice. And today we put our elders out to pasture like they're no longer useful. And that started with Otto von Bismarck deciding that retirement was something we subjected people to and literally made them give up their jobs because they were no longer functional. But we don't leverage the experience and the wisdom of generations and the storytelling that they can do. And I'm not putting you in the elder category, I swear. But being a storyteller, as we get older, we have more stories to tell. Half of my employees were not alive, for example, at 9/11. Which is hard for me to even fathom that something that changed our world so much is no different to them than D-Day or Pearl Harbor. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't resonate because you didn't live through it. And the next generation will not believe that COVID happened. At least let's hope in the way that it did. Wow. Let's hope that's not, but the fact that my daughter spent and our kids spent 2 years mostly online and having a totally different experience than the fact that some college kids spent a year or two not being able to have that experience, or seniors missed their proms or their senior seasons or whatever it is. It stinks, but it's also a story that will be told for generations that will sound like, how did that happen? Like, what do you mean? So I love your grown-up plan. And I suspect it's one of many. I suspect that you will tackle that one. So I want to know for sure what the extra credit assignment is. And I think, first of all, if people don't get this book, they're making a mistake, because I already love it. And I can't wait to, first of all, it arrived unsigned, which is very hurtful. I thought they would have been, I was willing to pay a premium for your autograph and everything else. But no, it's wonderful. So I hope folks will do that. But what other extra credit assignment is out there for folks who can take one nugget of wisdom or advice from today's talk?
I think people should continue to educate themselves and to educate everyone that they care about, especially the financial stakeholders in their lives, about money. And one great way to do it, by the way, is by listening to podcasts like ours. I think that's really important. You mentioned that a lot of, the stuff on CNBC, which is, sure, watch CNBC if you want, but for your real financial advice, think about who you trust, who's qualified. Influencers can be entertaining. They're not necessarily wrong, but really look at the qualifications and vet who you're listening to when it comes to real financial advice, not just entertainment, but have conversations then about that information. So one thing, my son, who's 15 now, we used to listen to Business Wars when we were driving. During the pandemic, I had to drive him around a lot to different things because there wasn't public transportation and stuff. And we started listening to Business Wars, and we would start having conversations about, Tesla versus General Motors, or, whatever the different things were. It was Best Buy versus, I think it was Circuit City or something, different things that came up on Business Wars. So, listen to your podcast, and then discuss, with the people that you care about, with the financial stakeholders in your life, which include your children, your parents, and anyone that has financial ties to you, your business partner, maybe your boss, maybe your underlings a little bit, but everyone that connects to you through a shared interest in money and prosperity, and have those conversations about the content that you're consuming. That's my extra credit assignment. Is that a good one, Eric? Did I do okay?
You nailed it.
Okay.
That's a great assignment. And I hope folks will do it, because there is a lot of information out there, and there's also a lot of noise. And being able to determine the difference, it's harder and harder. I mean, the messaging that we're getting, if you're getting your news from TikTok, it's probably not a good thing. There's a time and place for everything, but finding reputable sources and then getting good information is super important. Where can folks check you out? I know we showed the websites, but What is the best way for our audience to fall as much in love with your work as I have?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, first of all, you can always write to us at hello@financialgrownup.com. That's a good email if you want to be in touch right away. The website is Financial Wellness Strategies, and you can, also get to us through the contact page there. If you do want to learn more about me, my personal website is bobbirebell.com, BOBBIREBELL.com. If you want to learn more about Eric, you can listen to my podcast, which is Money Tips for Financial Grownups. He's got a great episode coming up. And I think the social media for me, probably the best one to follow is my Instagram, which is Bobbi Rebell and the number 1. And then I do post some clips from my TV appearances on TikTok. So those can be hopefully a little bit entertaining, and connect with me, of course, on LinkedIn as well. So, and that's just under Bobbi Rebell. And actually I throw out my married last name, which is Kaufman, on LinkedIn. So that's Bobbi Rebell Kaufman on LinkedIn. And I would just love to connect with people that share common interests. So thank you.
Well, we will put as much of that as we're able in our show notes. There are lots of ways to find you. I know that you and I are just getting started on something, because I can just feel the synergies and the different things we could do together. So thank you for being on the show. This was a pleasure, and always good to see you, and always good to hear about your exciting new stuff.
Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful. You do such a great job.
I'd like to thank all of you for watching and listening today. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us a message or leave comments at don'tretiregraduate.com or on social media. If you enjoyed our show, don't keep it a secret. Share it with family and friends so they can join you on your journey to financial freedom. And please leave us ratings and reviews on your favorite podcast platform. They are priceless to us. We'll be back next week with another installment of Office Hours, and in 2 weeks with another engaging guest. For now, this is your host, Eric Brotman, reminding you, don't retire, graduate.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Kestra IS or Kestra AS are not affiliated with Brotman Financial or any other entity discussed.